All right, let's get into it. Today, we are cutting through all the noise and all the hype to create a really clear, evidence-based guide to supplements for men. We're going to look at how you can strategically support your health through every single decade of your life using science as our one and only compass.
You know, if you've ever walked down a supplement aisle and just felt completely overwhelmed by all the bottles promising more energy, better performance, a total health overhaul, you are definitely not alone. It's a huge, confusing jungle out there full of really slick marketing and conflicting advice. So the real question is, what actually works?
And that's exactly what this is for. Think of this as your map through that jungle. We are going to lay everything out, step by step, based on what the clinical evidence actually says, not just what's promised on a fancy label. This is all about making smart, informed choices that fit your specific needs and your age.
Okay, so before we even start talking about specific goals, like boosting hormones or enhancing performance, we have to talk about the foundation. It's just like building a house, right? You need a solid base before you can even think about putting up the walls and the roof. And for your body, that base is a core set of essential nutrients every man needs just to function at his best.
The best way to think about a daily supplement is as nutritional insurance. This whole idea is backed up by major research like the Cosmos trial, and it basically frames supplements as a safety net. They are not there to replace a healthy diet. Let's be super clear about that. They're there to fill in the small but really common gaps that, even a pretty good diet can leave behind.
And look at this. This is a perfect example of one of those gaps. A staggering 95% of men do not get enough vitamin D from their food alone. That is a huge deal, because vitamin D is absolutely essential for things like absorbing calcium for bone health and keeping your immune system running strong. For most of us, diet alone just isn't going to cut it.
And beyond vitamin D, there are a few other non-negotiables on the list. You've got zinc, which is a real cornerstone for testosterone production and prostate health. Then there's magnesium. It's an absolute powerhouse, involved in everything from muscle function to keeping your hormones in balance. And definitely pay attention to vitamin B12. It's crucial for energy. And here's the kicker. It gets much harder for our bodies to absorb it from food as we get older, which makes it a really important one to keep an eye on.
Okay, let's shift gears and dive into one of the most heavily marketed areas in all of men's health, testosterone support. The claims are literally everywhere. But we're going to separate the hype from the reality and look at what the actual research says about a couple of really popular herbal supplements.
Let's start with a really powerful number. In a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, which is the gold standard of scientific research, overweight men between 40 and 70 who took ashwagandha saw a 14.7% greater increase in their testosterone compared to the guys who took a placebo. Now, this isn't just some marketing claim. This is a specific result from a serious clinical trial, and that could translate to real-world benefits in your energy, your mood, and even your recovery.
Now, here's what's so fascinating. These two popular herbs are trying to achieve a similar goal, but they go about it in completely different ways. Ashwagandha, on one hand, works by lowering your stress hormone, cortisol, which we know is a total testosterone killer. Tonkatali, on the other hand, works by basically uncuffing the testosterone that's already in your system from a protein called SHBG. This makes more of it free and actually available for your body to use.
So let's simplify it. Think of ashwagandha as taking the brain approach. It helps manage your body's central stress response system. So if you're dealing with high stress that's just dragging you down, this could be the right tool for you. Tonkatali takes more of a gland approach. It works directly in the bloodstream to increase the amount of free, usable testosterone. Two different paths to a similar outcome.
So how does all this information actually fit into a practical, lifelong plan? Well, a man's nutritional needs are not static. They change, they evolve over time. So let's break down what a smart supplementation strategy looks like, decade by decade.
All right, when you're in your 20s and 30s, the game is all about peak performance and building up that bone density for the long haul. The focus should be on that solid foundation we talked about: magnesium, vitamin D, and omega-3s. And then, as you hit your 40s, priorities often shift. It becomes more about cardiovascular health and managing recovery and stress. This is where you might bring in something like CoQ10, which is like a spark plug for your cells, and maybe consider an adaptogen like ashwagandha for those high-stress years. And then, in your 50s and beyond, the focus really sharpens. It's on prostate health, bone density, and cognition. This means prioritizing B12, maybe looking at a higher dose of vitamin D, and considering targeted support like beta-strol for urinary function. Okay, so we've got our foundational nutrients, we've got a strategy for different stages of life, but how do you actually walk down that store aisle without falling for all the marketing hype? Let's give you a few tools for some critical thinking. So let's take a super popular supplement for prostate health, Saw Palmetto. Despite being on every shelf, these huge, high-quality scientific reviews have found that when it's used all by itself, it performs no better than a sugar pill for the key symptoms of an enlarged prostate. This is a perfect example of the massive gap that can exist between what's popular and what's actually proven by science.
But here's the thing, science is rarely black and white, and this is a great example of that nuance. While saw palmetto alone might not cut it, newer research is showing that when you combine it with other nutrients like lycopene and selenium, the results start looking a lot more promising. So it shows it's not always about finding one magic bullet, but about finding the right strategic combination of things that can work together.
So how do you actually pick a good product off the shelf? Here is a simple checklist. First, always look for a third-party seal like USP or NSF. That's basically your guarantee that what's on the label is actually in the bottle. Second, choose a formula that's specific to your age. Third, avoid those crazy megadoses unless your doctor has specifically told you to take them. And finally, men's formulas should pretty much always be iron-free since most men get more than enough from their diet.
Ultimately, everything we've talked about comes back to that first point. Food is and always will be the foundation of your health. Supplements are not a replacement. They're simply tools. They're the reinforcements you can bring in to patch up the gaps and strengthen the structure that you've already built with a healthy lifestyle. So the question to leave you with is, which tools are you going to choose?